Hi GEG viewers, I'm Anna of Anna Bakes, and today we're going to be making Pop-Tarts. So I know Pop-Tarts are probably really scary and intimidating for a home baker, but I promise you it is so easy with just a few simple steps. So the first step of making homemade Pop-Tarts is the dough. So the first part of the dough is getting ½ pound of butter cubed and cold in the fridge, because when you're making any dough, you want it to stay as cold as possible. It's going to make your life a lot easier when you're rolling out the Pop-Tarts later. So once that's in the fridge, you can get your dry ingredients. So dry ingredients are flour. We have 240 grams, which, side note, grams are the most accurate way of baking. It's how I make everything. So if you have a scale, get that out. 11 grams of sugar and 6 grams of salt. So dry ingredients in your bowl, paddle attachment. And next, you're going to need 1 egg and 28 grams of milk. I always bake with whole milk, but if you don't have whole milk, you can use 2% or skim milk, that's fine too. So you're gonna whisk together your milk and your egg. Just a light whisk, let's break the yolk, combine them. There we go. All right. And once that's combined, you can start the mixer. We're gonna gradually add the butter. Butter first. Again, cold butter in the chunks, and then once you see there's pea-sized crumbs of the butter left in the bowl, that's when you can add your milk and egg mixture. You want to add it gradually, turn it up to medium speed. And just keep mixing until you see those pea-sized crumbs. The dough also turns a little more brown as the flour and the butter mix together. So once you see the butter is incorporated in the flour, you can add your egg and your milk. Just dump it all right in. And give it a minute. It's going to take a second for it to all incorporate, and we'll finish the rest off by hand. You can turn it up a little bit now, just so it's incorporated. There we go. Okay. Now you're going to want some flour for this, because it will get messy. All right, so just take your dough from the bowl, and then anything left over in that bowl, you just want to scrape, get out of there. Little tidbits. That's a lot of flour. We're just going to divide this dough into 2. So this recipe is enough to make 9 Pop-Tarts, but you need to roll out your bottom layer of Pop-Tart, and then you're going to roll out your top layer of the Pop-Tart. So you're just going to divide your dough into 2 separate squares and wrap them in plastic wrap. You want these to sit in the fridge for at least 2 hours, but preferably 4 or 5 hours. If you're in a pinch, you can stick it in the freezer. That'll accelerate the process, but just like this, because you want it to be extra cold when you're rolling out your Pop-Tart dough. So go put that in the fridge and come back for step number 2. Okay, so now that your dough is nice and cold and firm, we're gonna go with step number 2, which is rolling out your dough. So Pop-Tart is rolled into 9 equal rectangles, put in the fridge to chill, and then you're around your top dough, which will also be 9 even rectangles, because that'll sandwich the bottom and the top. So to roll out your dough, you need flour, a rolling pin, and a ruler. And if you have a knife or a pizza cutter, you can use one of those. That'll help you cut your lines on your Pop-Tart dough. You want to get a well-floured surface, because this dough is sticky. So don't be afraid of the flour. And whenever I'm rolling anything out, I just try to move the dough as much as possible. So I'll do a few strokes up and down, flip it over, a few to the right, a few to the left, roll it over. As soon as it starts to stick, you need to add more flour. So just put a little some pressure. And we're going for 12 by 9 here. That will give you the 9 squares that you need. And today we are making a guava and cheese Pop-Tart. So usually at the store you get your strawberry, your brown sugar, cookies and cream, which are all great flavors, but because I'm from Florida, we want to do something a little more Floridian. And if you're going to make homemade, you may as well make something you can't get at the store. All right. So that's close. You can also feel your dough. If the dough If you feel it, it starts to feel thin one place or thicker the other, just apply the pressure in the opposite direction. So I can tell it's a little thinner on the right, so I'm just gonna wheel it over to the left. And then I'm gonna check to see where we're at with my ruler. We need it to be 9 by 12. So we are good. So my bicycle, just gonna mark it at the 3, making sure you start wherever your scraps end. That way you get the perfect circles. If it helps, you can also cut off the scraps before you start measuring, or just wait until after. So we got 3, 6, 9. Mark them both directions. I like to mark it, and then once I move the ruler, I'll cut it. I just find that helps me with a better gauge. So again, starting at the end of your scraps and marking. So we're gonna do 4, 8, and then 12. So done with the ruler, and now we can cut our dough. Don't worry about them being perfect, because once you put the egg wash on there, the filling in between, and the glaze, they're gonna look beautiful. And then any of your scrap dough, you can just put back in the fridge, and you can use it again later once it's cold. If you wanna make, more Pop-Tarts, which you probably will after this. So working really fast, because this dough does get really soft and buttery, we're gonna transfer all 9 of our rectangles onto a sheet pan, and we're gonna get that in the fridge as fast as we can. And then while these are chilling, we're gonna roll out our second square of dough, which will be the top of a Pop-Tart. And by that point, this will be cold enough for us to go back and to assemble. Okay, so after you roll out your squares, your second part of your dough, put it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes so it gets extra cold. So while that's in the fridge, you're gonna get your fillings together. So the fillings, because it's guava and cheese, we have guava paste, which I love the Conchita brand. Highly recommend this one, but any paste will do. And then for the cream cheese filling, it is gonna be 8 ounces of cream cheese softened, and then just a 1/4 cup of sugar. Mix it by hand until it's nice and smooth. I use these piping bags that I got from the store, but if you don't have piping bags, you can use a Ziploc bag and just cut a little hole at the end. Okay, so once your squares are nice and cold from the fridge, you can grab them out. Before we put the cream cheese and the guava down, we're gonna give it a light egg wash. I have a pastry brush here. If you don't have a pastry brush, you can even use a spoon, just very carefully go over it, or your fingers, whatever you're comfortable with. I just do 1 egg and then a dash of milk, about a tablespoon. It just gives it the color. It'll help the top and the bottom stick together, and then when you bake it, it helps with the color of the dough. Gives it a nice brown, crispy texture. So light egg wash on all your squares. Okay, and then for the fillings, because the guava is a little more firm than the cream cheese, I'll start with the guava first. And I imagine I'm eating the Pop-Tart. If you're eating this Pop-Tart, you want the guava and the cream cheese in every bite of that dough. So I make a square instead of just putting it in the center. That way you know it's gonna bake and melt all into the corners. So just like so. Okay, when you're done with that, grab your cream cheese filling. I just like to go right in the middle, just like that. So now the fun part. Press your other half of the Pop-Tart dough right on top of the bottom layer. You're gonna repeat this with all 9 squares. I just give it a little firm pat. The egg wash is what is gonna help it stick. Remember that egg wash we put on before the filling. And then I like to go back and give a firm little press just to seal the edges. Trying to match up the corners to the corners, but don't go crazy if it's not perfect. It's gonna be perfect once you're eating it. To really seal the edges, grab a fork and some flour. Flour is your friend here. So you want to dunk your fork in the flour, and then we're going to just crimp all 4 sides of the Pop-Tart. So what I'll usually do is I'll do all the bottoms, I'll do all the left side, turn it all the right, just to make your life a little easier. And then if it starts to stick, that's when you dunk it in the flour. All right, so when you're done crimping, it should look something like this. And I like to do the egg wash before I put it in the fridge to set, because I feel like that is when the dough absorbs the yolk from the egg, which gives it that brown color. So after you crimp them, take your egg wash and just lightly brush it all around, getting all the nooks and crannies of where you just worked the edges. So your Pop-Tarts were in the fridge for at least 30 minutes chilling before you baked them at 350 for 30 minutes in the oven. So now they are nice and cool and they are ready to glaze. While these were in the oven, I went ahead and made my glaze. I use 4 ounces of guava, the same paste I used for the filling, 4 ounces of cream cheese, softened, 8 ounces of powdered sugar, and then 1 tablespoon of light corn syrup. So the light corn syrup is really good for glazes because it adds that little shine and it'll make the glaze firm up, because you want these to set after an hour or so of drying. So when I'm glazing these Pop-Tarts, I like to do what I call flooding. In the baking world, flooding is how we make our sugar cookies for Christmas or any decorated cookie. What we will do is pipe a square around the perimeter of the Pop-Tart, and then with the piping bag, we'll color it in just like a coloring book. So, like so. Light pressure, just piping a square, and then color it in. And it's up to you. If you want more glaze, less glaze, that's fine. If you want a thinner glaze, you want it to be rustic, you can always just use a spoon and throw some on the Pop-Tart. Whatever you want to do for your Pop-Tarts is A-okay. All right, GEG viewers, if you've been following along, we've been making our homemade guava and cheese Pop-Tarts, and they will hopefully come out just like this. So, any questions, comments, just comment below, and I hope you guys have fun staying home, staying safe, and making guava and cheese Pop-Tarts. So, thank you.